Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the class. In the previous class, we have discussed about the land reforms, and then we have discussed about the food crisis that India was facing in the in the decade of 1960. And this food crisis was discussed with a special reference to Bihar. And then we have discussed about the public distribution system. And today we will discuss the white revolution. And for this white revolution, the most important, we can say the engine behind this revolution was Amul. So first of all, we will discuss Amul. Amul is a dairy cooperative society of India, and in this regard, I think you must understand the meaning of cooperative. Cooperative is a voluntary organization, a voluntary association of people for the purpose of meeting the common cultural, social, or economic needs. And it's a jointly owned enterprise. The most distinctive feature of a cooperative is that there is no such relationship between owners and the workers. Everyone who is the member of the cooperative uh, is the owner of the society, and there is no what we see in a capitalist economy in a private sector. We see that there is industrialist, there is the difference between the owners and the workers, and this difference is not existing in a cooperative society. All are all members are the owners, and the profit is distributed among all the members according to their contribution. So this is the system of cooperative, and this Amul was a dairy cooperative society. And Amul, it was based in Anand. Anand, which is a town in Gujarat, and it was formed in the year 1946. And it has, you can see it here, uh, it is joined by about 2.5 million milk producers. So it is based in Anand, then it is joined by about 2.5 million milk producers in Gujarat. And now, how this Amul came into existence. This Amul was launched by Gujarat Cooperative Milk and Marketing Federation Limited. This GCMMF has launched Amul. And in all these, we see a name which is very important, and the name is Verghese Kurian. He was called the milkman of India because he played a very crucial role in the development of a dairy cooperative movement in India, with his special role in the Amul. He was chairman and founder of Amul, and the then Prime Minister Lal Bahadur Shastri has named him as the chairman of National Dairy Development Board (NDDB), and in this way, he was the man behind this cooperative movement, this dairy cooperative movement of India, and with this, one more term is associated, that is Operation Flood and White Revolution. So First of all, we will try to understand what is Operation Flood. It was started in the year 1970. Then we see that it was world largest dairy development project and a landmark project of India's National Dairy Development Board. This Operation Flood was a project of National Dairy Development Board. And we see that because of this Operation Flood, what happened that India was transformed from a milk deficient country to the world's largest milk producer. It surpassed United States of America in the year 1998. Before 1998, United States of America was the largest producer of milk, but because of this Operation Flood, India became the largest producer of milk in the year 1998. And we see that this Operation Flood organized cooperatives of milk producers. Okay, how it was done? It organized cooperatives of milk producers into a nationwide milk grid with the purpose of increasing milk production. What was the purpose? The purpose was the increasing of milk production, then bringing the producer and consumer closer by eliminating middlemen. What we see in most of the cases, what happened that the end the first producer and the end user both are exploited, and who are benefited? The beneficiary class is the class of the traders who are neither producing nor consuming. Still they are the most benefited group. So the purpose of this Operation Flood was to bring the producer and the consumer closer. There should not be any middleman, because middleman causes lot of loss to the producer as well as consumer. So this was the purpose, and then the another purpose was assuring the producers a regular income throughout the year. So we can say it was not just a dairy program. It was aimed at the development of the whole rural area, and poverty alleviation was also associated with this. And this Operation Flood, what was the engine behind this Operation Flood? The engine behind this Operation Flood was Anand patent experiment at Amul. So Amul was the engine, and Amul, so many milk cooperative societies were formed on the pattern of Amul throughout the country. So it saw dairying as a path to development. Dairy was given so much importance because it was a path to development. How it was bringing development? It was bringing development by generating employment. Obviously, employment will be generated. Then, when employment will be generated, then income will be there. And in this way, poverty will be alleviated. So, this is not just a dairy program. It was a path to development. Not only this, what we see that the number of members of the cooperative has continued to increase with the number of women members. and women's dairy cooperative society also increasing significantly. So the number of women member also increased in the cooperative society, and that brought women empowerment that make the women economically independent. In this way, their social status, their status in the family has increased, status and respect as well as. So in this way, it was called White Revolution. On the pattern of Green Revolution, as our government, the effort of our government became very successful through the Green Revolution, and the problem of food crisis was solved through Green Revolution. So following that pattern, this White Revolution was started by the government, by the then government, and this White Revolution is uh, we can say both are same, the Operation Flood and White Revolution. Operation Flood and White Revolution both are synonyms. So this is all about Amul and White Revolution. Now we will move forward, and we will see uh, a cartoon which is given on the next page. So in this cartoon you can see uh, this is this man is depicting Pandit Nehru, the Prime Minister, and these are the common people of the country, especially the people who were below poverty line. And these people have so many expectations from the government, and they are looking up to the government in order to solve, in order to meet the basic needs of their family. You can see their physical condition. They all are not getting enough food. It is very much clear from the picture, and you can see the cloth they are wearing. So they are living in acute poverty, and they have lot of expectation from the government, from the prime minister, and the prime minister is assuring them that we are ascending, we are reaching up, and soon we will be above hunger and want. Uh, all these problems of poverty will be solved. The basic need of the people will be fulfilled. This is the assurance which is given by the Prime Minister. Meanwhile, have a little snack. So, this is depicting the hollow promise. You can say it. It was a kind of hollow promise uh, by the government, because the government is not able to solve the problem of poverty. Though it is depicted, it is the period of third plan. Third plan is going to start, and still the condition of the country was so miserable. Now we will see some question answers of this chapter. The first question is, it's a multiple choice question. Which of these statements about Bombay Plan is incorrect? So you have to see which statement is not correct regarding the Bombay Plan. So be careful in these type of questions. You have to tick the incorrect option, not the correct option. So the first is, it was a blueprint for India's economic future. Second, it supported state ownership of industry. This is true, because Bombay Plan was about state ownership of industry. Then the third is, it was made by some leading industrialists. I told you that at that time the top 8 industrialists met there in Bombay, and they formulated a plan which was called Bombay Plan, and it supported strongly the idea of planning. This is also correct, but the first option is not correct, because it is saying that it was a blueprint for India's economic future. This is not correct. Now the second question, which of the following ideas did not form part of the early phase of India's development policy? So in this we see planning was there, cooperative farming was also there, self-sufficiency, the idea of self-sufficiency was also there, but the idea of liberalization was not there. So we have to correct, we have to take that answer which was not a part of the early phase of India's development policy. So, planning, cooperative farming, and self sufficiency, all these were part of early phase of India's development policy, but liberalization was not a part. Now, the third question is the idea of planning in India was drawn from, uh, yes, the Bombay Plan. Yes, the Bombay Plan was one of the most important reason uh, for adopting the planned economy in the country. Then B is experiences of the Soviet bloc countries. This is also true because I told you that during the interwar period, the whole world faced the problem of worldwide economic depression. But at this time, Soviet Union displayed um, very good economic growth. So our national leaders were very impressed by the economic development of the Soviet Union, which was brought by the planned economy. Then Gandhian vision of society and demand by peasants organization. And this was not there, so only answer is A and B. Now, the fourth question is match the following. So, the first is Charan Singh. Charan Singh, he uh, supported the cause of farmers. So, we will match him with farmers. P.C. Mahalanobis, he supported the idea of industrialization. So, we will match him with industrialization. Now, Bihar famine. It's there is a letter has been omitted. This is zoning, Zoning. So Bihar famine. There was one of the reasons for the famine in Bihar was the zoning policy of the government. And then Varghese Kurian, he was associated with the milk cooperatives of the country. Now we will start the next chapter, and the next chapter is regarding the external relationship of India. So, when we were doing our first book, we have discussed about the Cold War, and this chapter is also related with the scenario of the world which was prevailing when India got independence. So, India got its independence at that time when the international politics was very challenging. At that time, the world had witnessed a devastating war, and there was so many problems arose with the end of the war. Like the whole of the Europe was devastated. There was need to reconstruction of Europe, and then we saw that there was an attempt to establish an international body which about which we have discussed in the first book. So other than this, what we see that many new countries were emerging. Many countries of Africa, Asia, and Latin America were getting independence from their colonial power because of collapse of colonialism. And most new nations were trying to come to terms with the twin challenges of welfare and democracy. So, all the countries which gained their importance, gained their independence after the Second World War, they were facing almost a similar type of problem. The most important problem was welfare of the people. The most important challenge before these newly independent countries was how to uh, do more and more welfare of the people, how to uh, remove poverty, and how to bring economic development. So these were the two most important challenges. One was welfare and the another was democracy. As we have seen in regard to India, that when India became independent, it has three challenges. The first challenge was uh, regarding the integration of the country, and the second challenge was regarding the establishment of democracy in real sense, and the third challenge was the economic development. So almost all the newly independent countries were facing these two challenges: the problem of economic backwardness, and to bring about economic development, and thus um, mm, doing the welfare of the people. And then the second challenge was to establish democracy. And what we see that all these situations which was prevailing at the time of our independence, all these have their effect on the foreign policy which was adopted by our national leaders. Because foreign policies are not formulated in vacuum. According to the situation, the policy is formulated, and these were the situations which I have discussed just now. So all these factors affected the formulation of a foreign policy of India. So these were the international scenario, and apart from this international scenario, India was having some internal problems also, some problems with its neighbors also, because uh, with independence came partition of the country, and this partition caused a lot of trouble for the people of both the countries, we can say, because there was displacement of the population, and this caused a lot of violence and killings. So these were the peculiar particular problem which was faced by the newly independent country of India. So this was the situation. Then removal of poverty, bringing economic development, and establishing democracy. All these challenges was there within the country, and we see that in international scenario also there was a very different type of situation was arose, and all these have their effect in the formulation of foreign policy of the country. As a nation born in the backdrop of the World War, India decided to conduct its foreign relation with an aim to respect the sovereignty of all other nations and to achieve security through the maintenance of peace. So, India is a peace loving country, and it took birth just with the end of the Second World War. India has taken birth. So it was decided by our leaders that we will make our contribution for the maintenance and promotion of world peace and security. And for that purpose, it is very much important that we must respect the sovereignty of all other nations. If all the country will respect the sovereignty of all other nations, then there will be peace. The peace can never be breached because sovereignty is the if we are giving respect to the sovereignty of other nation, then there will be peace. So it was aimed by our national leaders that we will conduct our foreign relation in such a way that we will always respect the sovereignty of all other nations, and we will try to achieve security through the maintenance of peace. So, India is called a peace-loving country, and all these aims which we have discussed just now, all these aims are there in the directive principles of state policy, because these are the guidelines for the government. When the government is going to formulate any policy, it must um, mm, formulate the policy by following the guidelines which are given in the directive principle of state policy. And when our leaders are going to formulate foreign policy, then in that case also there are guidelines for the government in order to formulate the foreign policy, and this we will discuss in the incoming discussion. Just as both internal and external factors guide the behavior of an individual or a family, both domestic and international environment influence the foreign policy of a nation. So whatever in political science, what is required if you want to understand anything in a clear manner, you must try to understand the nature of a man, the person, an individual person behaves in the similar way as a country behaves. So if you understand the an individual, how in different situation what will be the reaction of the individual, how an individual thinks, then you will be able to understand whole uh, mm, the whole thing about the country. So we see that whatever is the behavior of an individual, it depends on the internal and external factors. Internal factors, it means the family in which he is living. First of all, his own physical condition, his mental condition, then his family. These are the internal factors. And then external factors are the surroundings in which he is living. So all these internal and external factor decide the behavior of an individual. So, in the similar way, both domestic and international environment influence the foreign policy of a nation. And we have discussed the domestic environment, which was prevailing at the time of getting independence, and the international environment has also been discussed. Now, the developing countries lack the required resources to effectively advocate their concern in the international system. So they pursue more modest goal than the advanced state. They focus more on peace and development in their own neighborhood. So what we see that these countries which got independence after the Second World War, they are called developing countries, and the countries which are belonging to the Western world are called developed countries. So, developing countries means the countries of Asia, Africa, and Latin America, which became independent after the Second World War. So the developing countries were not having resources. They were lacking in resources. They were the poor countries because they were under the colonial rule for so many years, for so many decades, for so many centuries. They were under the colonial rule. So there will be lack of resources. So uh, they will not be able to have their effect in the international system because they are not having the resources. So they pursue more modest goals than the advanced states. The advanced states, the developed countries are having the resources, but these countries, developing countries, are not having the resources. So what is done by the developing countries, that they focus modest goals. What do you mean by modest goals? Modest goals means they focused on peace and development. Their focus was peace and development. Moreover, what we see that their economic and security dependence on the more powerful states occasionally influence their foreign policy. What happens that they are poor countries. They are developing countries. So they have to depend on more powerful states for economic purpose, for security reasons. Uh, they have to depend on the more powerful states, and this dependence also influence their foreign policy. So, what we see that in the period immediately after the Second World War, many developing nations chose to support the foreign policy preferences of the powerful countries who were giving them aid or credits. So, this happened because these countries which became independent after Second World War, they were poor countries, they were developing countries, they were not having enough resources. So what they did, they started to support the foreign policy preferences of the powerful countries. They started to support we can say that they started to support the blindly the powerful countries because they were in need of aid, they were in need of credit. So they thought that if they will support the foreign policy preferences of the powerful countries, then they will be able to get the aid and credit. So what happened? The whole world was divided into two groups. We can see two blocks, which about which we have discussed in the first chapter of the first book. So one was under the influence of United States and its Western allies. Two camp is there. One camp is of United States and its Western allies, and the other one was the Soviet Union. And then we have read all these things. Then we see how non-aligned movement came into existence, and our Prime Minister Pandit Nehru was very much responsible for bringing this non-aligned movement. The end of the Cold War changed the context of international relation entirely. You have seen how the Cold War has ended in the year 1991, and with this end of the Cold War, the whole international relation changed, and we are discussing about that period when India became independent and Cold War just beginning, and the world was getting divided into these two camps. So India uh, did not chose. India did not wanted to be a part of any one of the camps. because it was the opinion of India that uh, if the world will divide into two blocks, then uh, there will be danger to peace. There will not be peace in the world. So, in order to promote world peace and cooperation, India adopted the policy of non-alignment. Though we can say that at present situation, in present situation, when there is no two blocks, when there is no Cold War, then the non-aligned movement has not still it is still not relevant, but at that time that was a most relevant topic, and it was very important at that time. And so we will discuss this in the next class.